Folks, I'd like to welcome everybody to a very special designer-assisted unboxing, but not just a designer-assisted unboxing featuring the legendary Danny Parker, designer of this game, The Last Gamble, and the legendary Battles for the Ardennes from SPI. But we are going to do a simultaneous designer-assisted unboxing here because Danny's got his freshly arrived copy off the Compass Games Express. Danny, how's it going tonight? And thanks so much for joining us.
Great to be here. Great to be with you. And a long wait, working for a long time on this, and feels pretty good to me. And
Mhm.
feels great to be on your show. I've been looking forward to it.
Feels so heavy. That's what it feels like. This is a eight plus pound war game box here, folks. It is very heavy, and we're going to see why in a couple of minutes. But I guess the first thing I feel obliged to ask, this is not a question that I would ask, but I have seen other people ask it, and you know what question is coming, of course. Why did we need another Bulge game?
Yeah, isn't that a shame, really, a pity? Well, in my case, I don't know what else to do, but I don't, maybe we don't need another Bulge game. But the only thing I do, the only thing I've done. I have toyed with the idea of doing other things over time, but the philosopher Seneca, or Seneca, depending on how you pronounce that, said if a man should go far, he'd best not wander down too many different paths. So I've
That's fair.
stuck with this one thing, and there's so many nuts out there that really want to know everything about this. And when you have, quarter of a million people involved in a battle with thousands of machines and stuff, terrible weather and a really odd circumstance, there are a lot of stories and there's a lot of information and there's a lot of things to try to see if you can figure out that is they're hard to understand. So
Mhm.
I've just stayed with it. So that's not answering your question directly, but it is saying that it is possible to study this for a long time and still feel like you're still learning things. I've done that, and when I was contacted to consider redoing or re-releasing what was then Hitler's Last Gamble before his name was expunged, um, I attacked it the way I normally would, which is uh, let's see what new information we have, and let's try to do this right, since the original, even though well received, have so many problems. And
Mhm.
to be honest, we ended up with a new game. Although it says it's a re-release of a previous game, it does. There are parts of the components that look similar, and some of the basic systems look similar, but it's really we'll talk about this more. But it's a new game. So do we need a new Bulge game? It depends on how focused you are on having things right, and how focused you are on having history that you can play that will teach you something. And so I felt like this was my best gift I could give, kind of at the end of the last quarter of my life, to try to give the gaming community back the enthusiasm they have for Ardennes games, and say, well, this is the best I can do. Here it is. And plus, it's not like the content's hidden. So you can say, well, Parker had this unit rated at such and such, but Parker will tell you why he has that unit rated at such and such.
Mhm.
And you'll be able to find out. And when you're doing your Bulge game, you can say, well, here, I was able to learn exactly why it was this way. And so the game is a resource. It's more than just a Bulge game. It is, as I told Thomas, and I'm not sure how well this went over early on. I said, well, it's going to be a book you can play. So it's going to be a book you can play because I write. That's my major thing I've been doing. And so this 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 thing, the 8.2 pounds, oh, you know, 3 pounds of that are the booklets, and we'll talk
Mhm.
about those. And the
Mhm.
largest amount of those 3 pounds comes from the 120-page historical study in it,
Mhm.
where everything from soup to nuts it's dissected.
Mhm.
And to be honest, to really honest with players and with myself and with you, Artie, is I'm still learning. So, and I was just having a conversation with Frank Davis, who was congratulating me on the release, and
Hmm.
I said, well, there's still some strange things I want to talk to you about relative to what happened in this battle. And anyway, isn't it great that that there might be a room for another Bulge game and another Bulge game that can teach you some really unique things?
Hmm.
And also, even though it's, people are saying now it's not as complicated as I thought, it's still not a simple game. But Rich Hoffman and I decided we found some very strange things that ended up being humorous. And he said, let's make these part of the regular game. Let's don't take these out of the optional rules and stick them in the main game because they're funny.
Hmm.
So we decided that humor has a place in the stuff that we do, right?
Sure. We're trying to
So
enjoy ourselves
yeah,
after all in our explorations.
we're trying to enjoy ourselves. We're playing games and we're loving the fact that we can learn history at the same time, but we might as well enjoy the jokes that were on the combatants during that time and experience them ourselves by trying out this new weapon system that doesn't really work like we thought it would.
Imagine that. Now, I'll tell
Imagine
you.
that.
I'll tell you what. I don't know if I needed another Bulge game, but what I can tell you is I needed this Bulge game specifically. Now, this, of course, has a long heritage, right? Starting with your experiences designing the battles for the Ardennes game from SPI, and then Hitler's Last Gamble would then later appear from three. It was 3W, correct?
Yeah, and then in between we had Dark December, where
Mm,
I was basically telling Avalon Hill I can do better than Boat 65 is a mess, which although it got me interested in doing games,
mhm. As it
and I
did
said
for a ton of people.
it did, and that thing is still being played
Mhm.
competitively too.
I saw it on
But
a table at WBC not 3 weeks ago.
and if you love humor, it's a good one because
Mm,
there's all kinds of crazy ass stuff going on in that. Like you have pink panzer divisions of strange numbers that don't really exist and a whole variety of things.
mhm.
Anyway, but
Well, the state
still,
of the art in research.
it was a great game. I told
Mhm,
Avalon Hill I can do a hell of a lot better than Pinsky did with Battle of the Bulge 65, and they had already picked up what Bruno Senegaglio was doing for them,
mhm,
and they published that, and it was a dramatic improvement relative to a lot of things that people really care about. One of the things that people really are nuts about with Ardennes games is they're nuts about the order of battle, and I followed suit since they love that. I've been forced to love it, even though I think that a lot of it's largely misplaced. What's most important are the game mechanics that we've never been able to get quite right. But anyway, we'll talk about those
mhm.
nuances later.
All
But
right.
this is something I'm proud of. I would say there really is room for this Bulge game because it's a resource. It will
Mhm,
teach you. It plays. You can play the thing. It's fun to play once you've learned how to master it, and it will teach you about how World War II was fought on this level.
mhm.
So anyway,
This may end up being the velvet underground of Bulge games, actually, where everybody that plays it decides they need to design their own Bulge game. And you know what? Bring it on, as far as I'm concerned.
yeah, as far as I'm concerned, when they say, well, I've got, and there are a lot of good Bulge games out there. Like,
Mhm.
to be honest, I think the BCS stuff is extremely well done. And anyway, I
Had a
have great
fabulous time
respect
with
for
that.
that. Great respect for that system and for what's being done there. And there's still more to be done, I think, but it probably isn't on order of battle, folks, because I with between myself and Andrew Delecky, who's a total nut about digging all this stuff up, we've really we've gotten down to you know individual SAS companies that the British had near the river that who the hell knew that that was going on? But anyway, Andrew's really a digger, and so I've been lucky with that too. I've had two terrific people to help with this thing. But I'm not moving us ahead, Artie. We need to be unboxing this thing.
Okay, I'm about to open the shrink wrap on this guy right now.
You've got a knife. Look at that thing, and I've already cut mine with my trusty knife.
Yep.
You know, my where are you, knife? My trusty little miniature buck knife. And I've lost several of these at airports. Be careful, people. They'll take them from you.
Sometimes you forget that they're in your pocket.
Oh, I leave them in my backpack, and that you really can forget that.
I think we got a 3-inch box here, too, and it feels like it is packed completely solid.
It is packed. And
it is packed.
It is packed. And so I'm going to pull the top of mine off here in my lap and then bring it up.
Got a pair of dice and some baggies, which is always handy.
We've got movement here. At least it's coming up. There we go.
Wow. Okay,
we
have a
top
bag.
Comes up.
We've got these feel nice too.
Yeah. So this is what I'm faced with. I'm faced with the dice, and a baggie, and then we have the warning to keep babies out of this
right here.
Folder that's got a massive group of booklets, and so I'm going to pull mine out.
Okay, I'm going to throw one of the maps down because one of the things that struck me immediately when I saw this on an actual table, that is, was just how absolutely stunningly gorgeous the maps are. They are really great looking.
Well, Ilya Kudryashov did all the graphic work, and he's really proud of it and should be.
Absolutely.
And he's like Mr. Enthusiasm too. He's so proud of this that whenever we relative to errata and so forth, we'll talk about that because it appears to be every gamer's peeve that I can tell is errata. But he said, "Oh, I'll fix that. Boom, 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 boom," because he there's some language challenges there, but he says. I got a message from him. I said, "What's going on, Ilya? What are you up to?" And he said, "I am a team player." Boom.
All right, boom. So we got 3 maps here, and they appear to be on a very heavy,
They're on a heavy stock. They're on a heavy stock, and
these guys out.
So I'm pulling out
gorgeous maps.
I'm pulling out the counters too. It's in a it's all wrapped up, but very. And this immediately has created controversy on the web, and it always does. But I'm not apologizing to people. You'll have to say that you want olive drab to get lost in the woods. You can do it. So, but we have them. We have olive drab within the. Oh, let's see if I can get this. I can't do very well, but we have olive drab within the symbol type. But we have, if you look at the U.S. uniform during World War II, for the average GI, most of it was actually brown. So brown. And
it's just not traditional.
It's not traditional, but maybe. Well, anyway, it's not traditional, but it's what I'm doing is not traditional but accurate, and it provides terrific contrast with the map.
I noticed that as well. We'll get to see some of that in a minute.
To be honest, that's really important. So we're showing different things, but I'm going to show first the rules. Let's see, and the rules. Something to say about that is the first author on this is Rich Hoffman, and Rich is, and these things are, whereas I don't know if you remember back in the Hitler's Last Gamble, but the rules were a freaking mess. I mean, they weren't garbage, but they were just a mess. And this is not,
no, this looks very tidy.
Rich has written manuals for the Marines, and he knows what he's doing. And also, too, he's been very disciplined in terms of language, grammar, repetition, cutting words. And people say, oh, another huge rule book, 75 pages. Well, turn to where the charts at the end actually begin, and that'll take you back to page 65. So it's a
Mm,
65 page rule book, and that includes my beloved optional rules.
mhm.
And if you go back before the optional rules, you'll end up with uh, something that's even shorter.
Mhm.
So let's
Plus,
see what
the optional rules start on page 52. So the
they
way I
start on
see it,
page 52, right?
yeah, the way I
Right.
see it, this is the 51 or so page rule book, and the print's pretty big. My eyes aren't getting any younger, that's for sure. And there's nice big margins people can take notes in as well.
Yeah, the rules book is a beautiful thing,
Mhm.
and you know, Rich is so disciplined. Like he said, I don't want any historical information. I don't want any extraneous stuff. No pictures. No nothing that's going to take up space. I want this thing. You know, what is that concept called? Parsimony. You know, you
Mhm.
have the exact thing that's necessary. And to be honest, he added footnotes, and
Mhm.
he's allowed to. And he wanted to tell you that this that why is there a flame throwing crocodile tank, and he describes what it was. I didn't tell him to do that, but he added things where he felt like the people reading the rules still needed that information
Mhm.
to be able to not be bumped or to
Mhm.
be confused. So the rules book is a beautiful thing. So I'm going to put mine down, and I'm going to move on. I'm going to continue this if that's okay, Artie.
No, go
And
right ahead. Yeah.
so the second thing is this big game booklet. And
Mhm.
what is this thing? Well, this features all the variants. There's 24 variants, 12 for the Germans and 12 for the Allies, so that it can be, you can have, you can choose the variant that you want to play with, or you can have a surprise thing using a deck of cards to figure out what you have. And at the beginning, there's a description of the scenarios. And this is important to point out and will help your audience out there. All those beautiful scenario cards that Rich invented, he said,
Mhm.
I love the scenario cards in Advanced Squad Leader. I wonder if we could have something like this that would have just the basic information you need for scenarios. They are reproduced in here,
Mhm.
so oh, I'm having trouble with my camera.
It's
So when
okay.
you
The
have
stack of play aids in here is enormous, by the way.
it is, and we'll talk about those. But relative to the scenario cards, when you go start searching for the one for, let's say you're looking for, I want a scenario card for 22 December, I'm going to play that.
Mhm.
It is reproduced in the game booklet. So if
Mhm.
the opposing player has got the card, won't show them to you, or can't find them, it's in here. It's already in here. It's reproduced. And that was a bit of duplication, but it was a duplication to prevent frustration.
Mhm.
Since we end up with so many cards, we wanted people to be able to find what they were looking for any particular scenario.
Mhm.
And so they're in here. And you'll also notice there's a lot of beautiful pictures, right?
Yes.
Since I've been a writer working on the Ardennes forever, uh, I've accumulated a large collection of beautiful photographs, and we use those to grace this thing. And they are, like this one shows, what's the
Mhm.
artillery gun uh, located southeast of Bastogne,
Mhm.
and its name is it's an 8-inch howitzer named Big Mama.
Mhm.
Anyway, there's beautiful pictures, and in the game booklet too, there are these variants.
Mhm.
There's historical descriptions of each scenario, so you have that, like what am I playing, and
Mhm.
then you have the designer's notes are at the end, and
Mhm.
of course this is where I went nuts.
By
And
the end, we mean 32 pages into a 80 plus page book.
yeah, yeah. So I'm not going to apologize for that, because I figure You wanted to know why do we, or should we need another Bulge game?
Mhm.
And so I wrote why we should need another Bulge game, and why this game is the way it is. You can choose to make yours different, but everything, I really went nuts in terms of really trying to describe to you why things are the way they are.
Mhm.
And to show how thoroughly everything was examined. So you can say, well, I don't agree with how the fuel is being dealt with, capturing fuel is being dealt with. Um,
Well, then
okay,
they could argue with whoever you're referring to in the footnotes, can't they?
they can go look at what I've got and say, well, yeah, this is what he thought. I think differently.
Hmm.
Okay, fine. And I don't want to paint it as if our team was always in perfect agreement.
Hmm.
It was good. It was three because they always said on the old sailing ships that they always had three clocks. So you
Hmm.
use the middle one because something was always wrong with some of them. So with three, the number three, if you take it's easy to find out what the median is quickly.
Hmm.
So we didn't always agree, and I'll tell you about some of the things we didn't agree on, and that'll be something that I didn't bring up a lot of the dirty laundry in this, but there wasn't a lot of dirty laundry really. Then you've turned into a really important thing that Rich contributed.
Hmm.
I had this description of the individual battles that comprise the opening of the German attack.
Hmm.
And Rich said, let's turn this into a thing where we show it in the game
Hmm.
and turn that into a teaching thing where
Hmm.
we teach how to play the game with the opening attacks. And that's is called Vakam Ryan, the game is history.
Hmm.
Man, is this a great idea? And it is a
Yeah.
great thing. And you will see, wow, a lot of these attacks look like that they were, quote, suboptimal.
Hmm.
Like I see that I think Tom Stearns is playing the game. I saw him on Facebook, and he was saying,
Hmm.
"I just finished the German attacks. Wow, that they didn't achieve a lot." But it's because he said the Americans appear to be dug in, and that's really affecting things.
Hmm.
Yes, it did,
How about
because they
that?
had been there for weeks, and
Hmm.
when they weren't getting watered down beer in Clairvaux, they were in their log hut,
Hmm.
which was covered, their foxhole covered with logs. That was the worst. Or you had bunkers that had been captured, all the positions were heavily improved. So the Germans were attacking the Americans in pretty well defended positions. So, but the game is history that Rich did is a terrific thing because it
Hmm.
also teaches how to apply artillery, which is complicated in the game, how to resolve attacks, how to deal with terrain in terms of resolving those attacks. And it's a great thing. And then he's got this beautiful thing at the end where he describes each of the individual attacks, their odds,
Hmm.
what can happen and what happened in his little test run that he did in the evaluation that he shares here.
That's
But
really fascinating. This is an amazing feature in this game, by the way.
it is an amazing feature in the game, and uh, there are some attacks that are important, and there are other attacks that are not. Um, but like one of the real big ones is attacks 3 and 4, the 277th Volksgrenadier battle to breach the Krinkelterwald, which was somebody blow a hole so the 12th SS Panzer Division can get through here, and it didn't work. And this game allows you to see why it didn't work, but it was close.
Hmm.
And it was closer than the histories would seem to indicate. And you can see that in the game. Something that's different from just reading a history. In the game, you get to see close run things, you get to actually get a sense of them.
Hmm.
And so that's a cool thing about a game that you won't get from reading history. Anyway, that's a resolved here too. So
Hmm.
anyway, so the game booklet has a lot of stuff that's going to be useful for you. The scenario cards and a historical description of why each scenario is important are described here. Then the variants that we think are things that could have happened, except perhaps for the free German setup. That one I think maybe we do, but you should have something that shows that you lose all the surprise advantages because you got detected moving people around. So basically, one of the reasons why the attacks look kind of suboptimal for Rich's game as history is units that just been brought up to the line quickly and go at it. here's what we have planned for you. For instance, you think, oh, the 116th Panzer Division had probably been there for days getting ready for their attack. No, they just arrived.
Yeah,
They
they
just
just rolled
arrived.
onto the map.
They just wrote onto the maps like, go for it. And it's like, that didn't work so well. But anyway, um, and as a gamer, but someone interested in history, you learn something from that, which is that can work. It can work to do that. And it can also go horribly wrong.
Sure.
So anyway, and the designer's notes I'm very proud of because they do show why I think that in some ways this is, even though it shares a title, it shares some legacy rules, this is largely a new game.
Hmm.
So do we need another Bulge game? I apologize. I agree there's a lot of things that are not gamed adequately, that should be. Like, for instance, I think the Mortain counteroffensive in France, if you want to keep it in World War II in 1944, I think that was a really interesting situation, and somebody should
Hmm.
spend some more time on it. It won't be me because I'm too old, and I don't have the time to do what I would want to do, the Danny Parker treatment, and that won't work, folks. Not enough. There ain't 20 years left in this body. So, and there are other things like Kasserine. Are you kidding me? That in terms of a counteroffensive, that's a really interesting situation.
Hmm.
But again, somebody else, not me. Then the historical study. Uh, These three things weigh 2.2 pounds. So all the three booklets are that. But we have in this thing, we have very detailed bibliography. So you can see exactly what sources I got. And since everybody's nuts about order of battle, the order of battle is everything's dissected. And Andrew, we ended up even going down to the description of the what kind of, I always just said, oh, they're Russian guns of such and such caliber. No, we want to know what, identify what those guns are, and remember to say something about the artillery supply situation with these guns. Okay, Andrew, we will do it. So we did. But anyway, the order of battle is a thing of beauty, probably misplaced effort in some degree, because one of the things I've learned is getting all the little tidbits right matters less than the game mechanics. So I said it,
Hmm.
right? So that's why the reserve rules in this game are vital. They teach you about why were reserves held out in World War II. They were
Hmm.
held out in Napoleon's time too. In this game, you get to find out, even from the very beginning, at the very beginning attacks, why were there reserves? It's pretty nice to have reserves to throw in when you
Hmm.
get a battle, which is a no result essentially in the game.
Hmm. This is
Uh,
going to chafe with some wargamers who like to just rush everything into the front lines immediately and damn the reserves.
Go ahead, and you will in the game. In the game, when the Germans are on the advance on the 18th,
Hmm.
17th, and 18th, 19th, you won't have many reserves because you're rushing as fast as you can go, and you're
Hmm.
also taking advantage of other rules like forced march. You're using forced march and saying, "We'll sleep later,"
Hmm.
but the coast is clear. We're going right now.
Hmm. Folks,
Uh,
there's a 10-page bibliography in here.
There is a 10-page book, and turn back, Artie. There's a great picture. Since everybody's nuts about the Tiger tanks, there is the only verified instance of a Tiger One left in the Ardennes, and it was from Swery Panzer Group Hummel,
Hmm.
which was part of the 506th Heavy Tank Battalion, and they couldn't find an open road. They only had 9 Tiger Ones,
Hmm.
and so they came in down south, uh, either at Gemund or at Roth, where there was a ferry to get them across. And they surprised the hell out of everybody they ran into, American wise. And they're in the game, and they make a difference in the game, and they made a difference there. Probably we don't restrict them as much as we might, because one of the problems being a corps or army group asset for the Germans was, where are you going to get fuel? Who's going to get that for you? Whose supply train are you leaning on? And in the Ardennes, Nobody wanted to give up gasoline for you. Are you kidding? And how far can you go on that? And are you going to be part of our division? No, you're not. Oh, well, you'll have to go somewhere else. And as Piper famously said, uh, my tanks can't depend on hay, so you can't forage for fuel really. But the Tiger ones, Swery Panzer Group Hummel was pictured in that picture. They're described in the order of battle, and then there's crazy things that we can learn. Like here's a chart showing the German organization for the 47th Panzer Corps on the 14th of December. And it shows, you won't notice this, but if you're me, you'll notice this. It shows an anti-tank battalion attached called 653, which was the Jagdtigers, or Jagdtiger, as you'd say in German. But anyway, people are nuts, or some people are nuts to know about where were those guys, and Hitler was nuts to know where were those guys. And I'm working on a short article basically to show why they weren't around, even though they were assigned. And they may have been around. It's possible that a few may have actually been around. It's still up for research, but unfortunately, they were a fuel, bridge, and reliability disaster. What other problems do we have to give them? They looked good to Hitler because you had basically a moving pillbox with a 128 millimeter gun that could shoot anything you could see. But in the Ardennes, that was a tree in front of you usually, and that's not going to help much with long range weapons. And there were a lot of problems with this. Not only was it underpowered, it had because it was underpowered, had transmission problems, engine problems. The suspension went out constantly, and get this: because the suspension went out constantly, you had to true up the cannon after every time that you went through with a volley. That's no good. And after every shot, you had to bring the cannon back down to neutral position to eject the shell. Crazy.
I didn't know that.
Yeah, you didn't know that, and it's bad and then the people who were working with that vehicle said, well, this just means that the Jagdtigers should only be employed in pairs. Good luck, there were only 9. Anyway, okay, now let's get to some other stuff that's in here.
Now we got 26 pages of German order of battle. It is
yeah. So if you're order of battle nut, you're I'm tailoring to you, even though warning you that the 653 Jagdtiger unit that everyone wants to know what happened to it hardly makes a hill of beans a difference. And there's an article in Paper Wars showing them breaking down frequently if they do show up. So the order of battle is less important than lots of other things. Morale in this game is really important.
I can imagine.
It is, and we describe why it is. And at the end of the order of battle thing you have there, there's a summary where I evaluate very tersely each formation for what their morale was like, how ready they were. Readiness is, are you trained? Have you just come out of combat? You have a bunch of replacements that you've just taken on. And then the section that you're in now is, how did we arrive at the combat factors and so forth? We're showing you the spreadsheets, and there's a lively discussion in there about things that we did to the Trevor Dupuis method to try to make it more realistic. And
I got to tell you, this feels like an enormous resource for any wargame designer, whether they're interested in the Bulge or not.
Yeah, you can say, well, okay, I see this. And I've got those spreadsheets. Don't ask me for them now because I'm too busy. But later, if what I will try to do is take a place, and then we'll try to set up a website or something for the game. And I'll post all this stuff as resources that you can have available if you're, doing something. But don't ask me right now because we're too busy with lots of other things.
No,
there it is. You're in the
that.
section now. So you find an individual formation, and then it tells you very tersely what our evaluation showed. And
Hmm.
proficiency, like look at if you have the airborne there, the U.S. airborne, they show proficiency is wildly high. So, and it was, I think gun for gun that each gun was used more. So they they were something that way.
Hmm. Hmm. This is going to be absolutely fascinating just to read through.
And people will disagree. There's so much in there that there's plenty to disagree with too. If you want to find something to disagree with, I'm sure you can find it. And when I tell you this is going to make people really focus on morale because morale is often more important in the game
Hmm.
than the combat rating.
Hmm.
And we had a lively, what, not an argument, but a discussion about right now. You could, having the highest morale unit in any engagement, you get that rating. And there's a few oddball units like the Second Ranger Battalion, U.S.,
Mm.
where you want to abuse them because they're morale one to help you with lots of things. But so the lively discussion was, you have those mixed with a terrible division. So how is that true?
Hmm.
Well, um, it is a game, and there are certain approximations that had to be made. But
Sure.
uh, relative to my take on it, high morale units really did influence engagements beyond their number because you were inspired or discouraged too
Hmm.
by the other folks that you were next to.
Hmm.
So, and
Fascinating quote from Dupuy here.
yeah, yeah, yeah. So, yeah, and he's basically describing there how he would take a squad of heavily motivated people over a whole battalion of uh, of not losers, but people who really didn't have any. They didn't want to fight. So
Right.
now let's talk about this, and this is a large part of the weight of the game.
Hmm.
This packet of stuff weighs 2.8 pounds.
There is easily an inch of player aids here.
And they're not player aids. A lot of them are setup sheets.
Hmm.
And they're also the scenario cards that I told you are repeated
Hmm.
in the game booklet. They are in here too. So I
Hmm.
want to show this is going to be one of the things that when people say you must see Artie's show on their dueling unboxing because Parker has really a good suggestion for us, and I do, because I've taken one since I got several copies of the game. I took them all apart, all these player aids, and I've organized them in the way you should consider organizing them.
Hmm.
Okay, so uh, first I want to tell you that there are the true player aid cards, which are, and I've just put them in rubber bands. These
Hmm.
are, I haven't counted the cards, but it feels like there's like 14 or something like that here in
Hmm.
this combat results table and so forth. So those are useful just to kind of put together. There's some examples of play, so those things, it's useful to organize them in their own place. And then I want to simplify your life by getting rid of a pound of stuff that you're not going to be using much at all. Although Andrew Delecky would probably be hitting me if he were here because this is this is the scenario he fought for.
Hmm.
Das Eisen Schmieden, which means strike. It's the German saying that we in English means uh, strike while the iron is hot. And so
Okay.
it occurs on 10 December. He had so much new information on what formations were where, and it really makes a difference because the 106th Division didn't even start the game. And in the area where the 12th SS Panzer Division was trying to break through, the 2nd Infantry Division wasn't even there.
Hmm.
And so there are bunches of things, but find all those cards. And there are a lot, and they're labeled at the
Hmm.
top. It describes to you at the top. It says Das Eis in Sweden. not all of those cards are single-sided except for the temporary rules tables. But
Hmm.
get all those together and put them in a rubber band and set them aside. They weigh a full pound. They are not used at all unless you're playing that scenario.
Hmm. Makes sense.
And so you can just take those and set them aside. And then you still have a large number of cards, but it's not so imposing. I told you,
Hmm.
get your true player aid cards and put those in a rubber band. Or I think a folder would be best, like a
Hmm.
8x10 manila folder. Chop the little label tag off, and it'll fit in the box, and you can label it, and it'll be. And then the Vaktamrine, put all those together,
Hmm.
and
Exactly.
you can put all those together, and they're in their own spot. And then a very small rubber band is the Battle Before the Muse.
Hmm.
It's
That
looks
appear.
like 5 pages, yeah, five charts. Have them by themselves, and you'll probably be using that right away because I really recommend playing that scenario to get going on the game. Then
Hmm.
the true scenario cards for all the scenarios, they're printed front and back. Put
Hmm.
all those together, and so you can always find whichever scenario you're playing, you can find those cards.
Hmm.
And then I saved, in some ways, I think the best for last. Everybody's going to be playing the 16 December scenario, but I'm telling you, this is the sneaky great nightclub scene. I don't know what I would say
Hmm.
about it. It's the 22 December, the high water mark
Hmm.
scenario is killer. It is so great. And it opens at the height of the Bulge, and you see the Americans are surrounded in Bastogne, Piper's surrounded in La Glaise. The Second Panzer Division is sitting there on the other side of the Ute River, getting ready to advance to the Meuse.
Hmm.
Or they can decide to go back and try to get Bastogne. And then Patton's down south, getting ready to do heavy duty crunch on everything there. And it's only 10 turns.
Hmm.
It's 10 turns as a laborious setup. Man, is it an interesting scenario. And the people that I've gotten to play it so far, Rich uh, Karami, who's been kind of a demo tester for us since the first copy was produced
Hmm.
in November, really loves this scenario. And I told him he would. He said, yeah, this thing, that is really something because as a German player, you really don't know what to do.
Hmm.
And you know that every decision you make at the beginning matters completely. It's like deciding which graduate school to go to, you know,
Hmm.
or to go to graduate school at all. So you know that those decisions are going to change your life. And in the 22 December scenario, if you say like, screw Bastogne, we're going to the Meuse River and we're going to move these people out, and and we have ideas for what to do about Patton. We're forget Piper up there. He's toast. We're moving we're moving people down now to deal with Patton, and we're going to the river. Anyway,
Hmm.
I'm rambling on this, but I really am enthusiastic for this scenario. So
Hmm.
the high water mark scenario, long setup, but it's only 10 turns. It uses all the maps, but it's terrific. So
Hmm.
uh,
Yeah. Rick's
big,
level
big,
of
big,
enthusiasm about this game is exceptionally high as well. I can
yeah.
confirm for the viewership that
The
I've talked to Rich a couple of times since last Compass Expo, and he's very enthused.
the uh, the other thing is of course, on the Vaktam Rhine, on the campaign thing, there's the last Blitzkrieg, which uses all the charts and so forth, the setup information and so forth. But that's only a limited number of turns too, and
Hmm.
it plays rather fast. Well, no, I would say it doesn't play rather fast because you know the problem that you and I already talked about in at Expo while you were getting COVID.
Hmm.
Um, we
Again.
talked about, moving in this game is not that easy.
Hmm.
And again, this is something I kind of can't apologize for because moving in the real Ardennes for the Germans with 150,000 people and all this stuff and horses, tanks, and artillery. It wasn't smooth, and
Hmm.
the terrain is just so that you're going to pile up on the available road net. And then we have, one of the things that was great that we worked with is, you know, uh, when we're redoing the map, uh, Andrew said, well, I have the population for each individual settlement from the
Hmm.
census from 1940 from Luxembourg and Belgium and Germany. I said, well, bring it on. We'll classify hamlets, villages, towns, and cities and all that
Hmm.
stuff according to population. You got it. It's in the game. So you
Hmm.
can say, well, hopefully this is just a village. Yeah, folks, it was just a village.
Hmm.
Anyway, but relative to the map, uh, you see these unusual severe terrain hexads. Maybe you can help viewers see them like around the river a bit better than I could.
I think I'm not sure how well this is going to show up on camera, but I imagine that these are
Yeah,
the
that's
hexads we're talking about. This is up on
yeah,
the Muse.
yeah, that's right. So those are heavily contoured terrain, and how do we do that? Well, we figured out, we did the road net. Andrew, we worked on the road net from period maps, so the roads were classified according to the way they were in 1940.
Hmm.
Not a lot of road construction going on during in the Ardennes during the war.
Imagine that.
So yeah, and so he was able to get all that right, but uh, the terrain in the Ardennes is really gnarly, and we had something that I did not have in 1988, which was Google Earth.
Hmm.
And Google Earth allowed me to take the map that Andrew was producing and project the contour of the terrain right on it, and then draw in these severe terrain hexads.
Hmm.
And severe terrain hexads were heavily contoured. Like if you're around the River in a lot of places, it's like there's the river. It's not just you get next to the river and you decide to cross, you expend all your movement points. Well, that's a nice idea, folks, but you're not doing that if you're a tank or if you're an
Hmm.
artillery or if you're something like that. If you're infantry, you can do it, but it's not going to go fast. So the severe terrain really mattered, and then also mattered for something that's near and dear to every wargamer's heart, which is zone of control concept. We
Hmm.
have zones of control in this game too, and a lot of units don't have them. And the units that do have them, like infantry, they become really valuable because they're the only way to hang on to terrain
Hmm.
easily. The problem is severe terrain with a river both will impede the zone of control from going across.
Hmm.
So it makes it so that and then armor can't cross severe terrain hexads without uh, a road or a trail
Hmm.
or a highway. So infantry actually has an easier time of it in terms of moving in this game. So German infantry can do things that the German armor can't. I
Hmm.
haven't taken my units out, but you have. So
Counters look, they're shrink wrapped because they'll probably explode out of the counter sheet at the slightest pressure. But they
I
counters
was
look
told
great.
that that's the case. I haven't done it yet. So, but I was told that what are the counter trees? That's what they were called. I
Hmm.
guess they tend to pop out of that. But anyway, I think Ilya did a beautiful job on the
Oh yeah,
counters.
these look terrific.
Yeah, and they're pretty big, and they are and
5/8 inch counters.
yeah, we came up with he came up with like what are we going to have an airstrike look like? And one of the more interesting ones was, okay, these people are fatigued. How do we draw fatigued people?
Hmm.
So he has pretty nice. He has a soldier kind of leaning on a weapon, so so some sense of that. And then
Hmm.
I've already got there are all these airplanes, and people say, well, what's an airplanes doing in a Bulge game? Well, this is a major difference, maybe one of the reasons why you want this Bulge game, because the air war is really important in this.
Hmm.
Um, It's not important on the 16 December scenario because you start off in bad weather, but the weather eventually clears and it really matters. So in the 22 December scenario, you better know the air rules down because you're going to be in it quick. And in the battle before the Muse, you better know the air rules down because you're going to be in it right from the beginning. I also did hear, Artie, from somebody that was posting that was describing their experience with the battle before the Muse scenario, and they were saying, well, this thing, what did they? I think they used the word nasty things start right away.
That makes complete sense. The counters are terrific. They got a nice sort of semi-gloss feel to them. I'm not sure what build has done with these to make them like this, but they feel very nice.
So the battle before the Muse scenario is not a gimme. It's not something that we just tacked in the game. It really is a really viable scenario. I think it's 8 turns, very short. You can set that thing up really fast. When experienced players can play it in a single evening. Um, you know, as designer and Rich as developer, we never agreed on how the best way to start that game is as a German player. So it's like a chess opening. There are a variety of different things you can do to start that game and what to do. And I hope that players out there will be on it and they'll be able to tell us, what their best opening moves were. So Rich is all for, the Americans start off holding the town of Rochefort. And he says, well, I use Panzer that comes on that first turn to wipe them out.
Yeah, these
I
come
haven't
out
been
of the
able to
sheath.
do that. When I try that, they end up, I have Panzer still busy there, trying to wipe them out while the 2nd Armored Division comes down and tells me why I shouldn't be there. But anyway, so my thing is just surround Rochefort and fan out and go too close to the river and make the 2nd Armored fight you out there. And anyway, I don't, what's the best way of doing that? Unknown at this point, but it's a competitive type of scenario. It's the sort of thing where we tried to make it balanced. My son and I used to play this thing while it was in development. I don't know how play balance ended up in the end, but you'll be telling me. One thing that I do recommend, kind of aftermarket, is that you get some transparent round plastic disc, like tiddlywink disc.
A little bingo chits, yeah.
Thank you, bingo chits, and the yellow work pretty well. And then because there's a lot of victory point towns in a lot of these scenarios, and you're always trying to remember where they are, you can just put that on them and get ready to go. And there was a discussion briefly on could we offer those with a game? No was the answer, but anyway.
Yeah, go figure. I've got a selection of round, rectangular, and all kinds of wooden blocks specifically for this exact purpose for whatever game.
Well, anyway, I'm telling everybody that's playing that scenario, you're going to be playing that thing competitively, hopefully against another opponent that's there or on Vassal eventually. And so you want some way of marking those places because they really matter. Like the guy that's playing it online that I saw, he's doing solo play. Very nice job. He says I'm going to capture Marche, which is the center road hub in the highways in that area. It's right under your booklets here. If you've got your booklets nicely arrayed, but if you look at there it is. He says I'm going to capture that because, damn, if you can, you really control everything, and it's a big point place. And but I could, it's like these other people must know how to do this better than I can because I have trouble capturing that place. But if you can, go for it. So,
yeah, I mean, so there are 3 maps, but one of those is a scenario specific map, correct?
Yeah, that's the small map for that.
Okay, that's the
and
one.
The
that's
idea was
right
that
here.
we wanted you to be able to set up the game for playing just that scenario on a small table
Hmm.
and be able to do that and not have it uh, give problems with having that in a larger having the larger scenario set up. One of the problems is, of course, the units in the Battle Before the Muse scenario are some of the units that are used in the campaign game. You know, one thing we could have decided to do would be to have just a counter sheet for the battle for the Ardennes scenario so that you would still be able to do both, something we did in the battles for the Ardennes quads. But,
Hmm.
you know, we're already at 8.2 pounds. So,
That's true.
and a lot of
Talking,
stuff. I was worried that it wouldn't fit in a 3-inch box too.
it barely fits in a 3-inch box. And I'm sure you would have had a hell of a time talking Bill into including one more counter sheet in this too. So,
Yeah, well, on this issue, you know, he was saying, well, what's the value of it? And I said, well, you'd be able to have the small scenario going at the same time you have a campaign going, or you can have
mhm,
you can have your group of people who are playing the campaign game, and you can be a nice guy and have your friends be able to play the battle
mhm.
battle before the Muse scenario, and that didn't work. But you know, that is an argument for two games. So,
That's true. Feel free to buy a second copy, folks. I guess I
but
want to. I'm not sure if everybody that's watching is going to know exactly how long the sort of production cycle was on this. I mean, we were talking last November, and it's, not too far from a year ago that this thing could be out any time. And I think we were here in February at the time. That's one of the reasons probably why there's a decent amount of errata in here already, because we waited so long we found it all.
well, okay. Here's where I have to be careful with what I say. But I'm not that careful with what I say, so we'll see what happens. So the departing from Compass, the value from or the estimate from Bill was March,
Hmm.
and I thought, well, that's great. March isn't that far away, um, and but you know, March came and went, and
Hmm.
then it got later and later, and you know, we did play the heck out of the thing
Hmm.
at Compass Expo,
And
and
Winterfest, I mean, Rick was hauling the proof copy around for a year.
yeah, and then we eventually gave that to Mark Ruggiero because,
Oh,
you
excellent.
know, his circumstance, it was the right human thing
Hmm.
to do. You know, the
Hmm.
guy is trying to stay here and an enthusiastic player. And I told Rick, I said, well, play it at Winterfest and then send it on to Mark. So that's
Hmm.
where that thing went to, and it was the right thing to do. Thank God Mark's still around. But
Yeah.
yeah, Rick played the hell out of that, and then I was able to get another copy, and then so Rick played that at Winterfest with a bunch of guys, and then he played it at Consim too.
Hmm.
And guess what? Playing that with that many people, and Rick's a good player, and
Hmm.
he surrounds himself with other good players, and with good players, we found some other stuff. So you know,
Present
the
company accepted, because Rick talks to me, and I'm not that good. But
oh well, you know, I can say nothing because you know, Rich is always amazed at what I don't know.
mhm,
But, you know, I don't know what to say to that. I can play the Battle Before the Muse scenario pretty well.
mhm,
And, but, you know, um, it's a game where familiarity really matters. But to get back to uh, Rick de Girolami,
Girolami.
Girolami, thank
Yeah.
you. He also knows the best Italian place to eat if you're
No, yeah, no kidding. Rick knows the
in,
best Italian place to eat anywhere that
oh,
you are at with Rick. I can personally attest to this.
he also knows he also has played tons of Bulge games,
Hmm.
played them all. And then here's something you don't know about Rick. He was one of the original playtesters for Battles for the Ardennes
Hmm. I
when I
did
was
know that because
living in
Rick told me
Miami.
that. But
And, you know, he's just a terrific guy.
yeah, really is.
And he does know the best Italian place to eat. And if you're a gamer, you should know the good places to eat and drink,
Hmm.
And one of the things that I like about your show is there's always a discussion about the right things to drink.
Almost
You know,
always.
yeah, there should be because, these are life's pleasures. So, but anyway, Rick knows the best places to eat. He also played the hell out of the game with really good players. And there was the errata was dated, what is it, November 29th? And that was
Yes.
after Expo with Bruno playing it and
Mm-hmm.
Rick playing it and Rich watching over uh, everyone's shoulder. And then I think,
Mm-hmm.
yeah, we had a bunch of people playing it there, and that was the state of the errata at that point. We've accumulated things, and so and we're still accumulating. So uh, one thing that came up is, well, why don't you let us know about this errata that you accumulated? And I said, well, you had told us, make sure we get the errata that you have. This is back in November,
Mm-hmm.
or no, December, beginning of December. Make sure you get us the latest so we can get it in the box. So we did that in November, but it's not November anymore. It's August. So
Mm-hmm.
anyway, there will be some more errata. That will be we're holding off on that until um, probably the end of the month.
Okay.
And we will also we're going to have a living rule book. A lot of people have complained about the binding on the game rules. They prefer a spiral binding, which I can understand that. But why not? And I've talked to Bill about this. We're going to have living rules so that the errata will appear in the rules, so you won't
Mm-hmm.
be say, well, there's the errata, but it's already there.
Mm-hmm.
And we feel like that's the best possible way of handling it,
Mm-hmm.
because you have the original rule book, you have the original pages of errata that may have, when I was at SPI, those things were kind of crazy. There would be this old errata still being shipped, whereas if you mailed a self dressed envelope to SPI, you could get the more up to date errata. But now, with the internet, everything's much faster. But
Mm-hmm.
we will have updated errata that will, and it's not another 3 pages, folks. So don't get flipped out. It appears like one of my observations getting back into the hobby is not only are people obsessed with, maybe they're obsessed with errata more than most things. I'm trying to think.
That's
Finding
possible.
finding things wrong is appears to be an obsession. And gaming is terrific for you that way, because these games are so complicated with so many nuances that the idea that you'll have a error-free game, I will have an error-free game before I die, means that you will live longer than Methuselah. So
If I challenge anyone watching today to name me an error-free game.
it ain't happening.
So exactly.
It's not
And I'll tell you
happening.
what, I am also leery of the perfect binding on wargame books because they tend to see a lot of heavy use at the table. And I've seen a couple examples in wargaming where they fell apart basically immediately. And these perfect bindings seem pretty tough to me.
They're good. I mean, I will say this, we're going to provide the rules so that you can put them in a spiral
Hmm.
binding for yourself and go to town. Um, but at the same time, I will say this, I think the booklets came out very handsome and good looking. And uh, yeah, the book that you can play is pretty damn nice. And
Hmm.
the, um the books, I think, came in at 2.2 pounds. So in between the maps and the counters, you have the rest of the weight. But you know, so so
It's a heavy box. It's a
it's a
really
heavy
heavy box.
box. And when yeah, you could definitely do weight training with 4 copies of them, like I pulled
Hmm.
in uh, last night. So
Hmm.
anyway, uh, what else should we talk about? There's lots of things.
I could gush about how fantastic this all looks, but we've already had that conversation, and I've been tapping my foot as impatiently as anybody else, waiting for
It's
this
been a
thing to
long
show
wait.
up. It
right?
does feel like it's been a long
It's
wait.
been a long wait because you and I saw it, and we saw it being played,
Hmm.
and we watched it being played, and we saw experienced players like Rick
Hmm.
playing the thing,
Yep.
uh,
Having a great
and that was
time.
back in November. Had a great time,
Hmm.
and we thought, well, it'll probably be out in March, but it didn't. And
Things take longer than you wanted them to sometimes. What can I say?
yeah, they well, I did tell Frank Davis this. I said, good is not fast. So
Hmm. Fair.
so uh, I am encouraging him to finish Divine Wind, which I have great hopes for
Hmm.
because
Me too.
I as a designer, I really have respect for him because he's willing to challenge things that you don't know well.
Hmm.
Um, and anyway, he's one of the people that I was close to when I was at SPI, and I remain, uh, what do I characterize as then thinking people. I like to think about things and try to figure out why games work the way they do or they don't work the way they should.
Hmm.
And one of the classic problems, and I talked to Mark Herman about this too, is I was trying to see what similarity there was with the surprise in the Ardennes versus Chancellorsville,
Hmm.
and Mark said, forget it. But anyway, that's a discussion to have with Mark Herman. But
Hmm.
there is this fundamental issue, and where Mark and I were discussing how designers loathe special rules, and gamers I think do too. It's like look what they're doing to me with the 7th Armored Division. I'm getting attacked by all these Germans coming in, and you're making me do things I don't want to do with the 7th Armored Division.
Hmm.
Sorry, folks. The commanders on the ground did not know what was happening on the 16th and the morning of the 17th. And we make you do they did know, the commanders on the ground did know that 106th Division out on the Schnee Eifel and the German territory were in another
Hmm.
big trouble because they were surrounded by the Germans. And here you have a totally green, untried unit, still missing its artillery, and with a lot of people still vehicle sick from driving from the coast to get
Hmm.
to the Ardennes, and yet now they're suddenly surrounded right after they've changed positions with the Second Infantry Division.
Hmm.
So anyway, they did. The American commanders did know that, and they knew these guys are in big trouble. We need to get somebody to them quickly. So when the 7th Armored came on, there was no question. You guys are going to go punch through the Germans and get our guys out of there, or restore the situation. Res- Restore the supply line, kick them out, get things static. By the time the 7th Armored started to show up, any ideas about restoring the situation were gone.
Hmm.
However, the fact that the 106th Division was in a super pickle, that was right. And so the 7th Armored Division is required to try to go rescue those people in the game, too.
Hmm.
And sorry, folks, losing 8,000 guys is not popular in any army.
Hmm.
So it's just not popular. So uh, the 7th Armored Division there are special rules for it where it has to go down there. And the same thing for the Combat Command B of the 9th Armored Division, which started up near Fayemonville. They went down there to try to rescue them too.
Hmm.
So anyway, rescuing them was a tough proposition since there are a lot of strong German
Yeah.
elements
And
closing in
those
on.
guys weren't just those guys were just in a bad position. I mean, even aside from the fact that they had just gotten trucked in, they were very swiftly but had been put in a very bad spot. So that all makes complete sense to me.
Charles McDonald was a personal friend of mine, and we did several tours together in the Ardennes when I actually was a young man. There was a time where that was true. Um, and I did ask him once, I said, well, Mac, what if you had been out there on the Schnee Eifel? You guys would probably have been okay. You would probably figured out how to hang on, right? He said, well, I don't know, and I'm glad that I didn't get to find out.
Hmm. Fair enough. Yeah.
So he said that was really a bad position to be in. You know, it would be like being the 101st Airborne, except worse, and because the Bastogne did not, was not like Clairvaux. It'd be like the having a bastion in Clairvaux. That wouldn't have gone well either.
Hmm.
Having a bastion in St. Vith with the 7th Armored Division, the way it works out in the game, isn't that great either.
Hmm.
That's really a terrible place to be. And you're exactly right. So the game has special rules that reflect uh, the fact that players they're omniscient. They know what's going on in the game. They know the Germans are there. And that's a real problem for these games is like, how do you simulate the surprise that existed in the American High Command? And in the game, we do it through special rules and some restrictions, but we can't do it that perfectly. I have had some conversations with John Butterfield about how you might simulate surprise in a larger sense, which would be to something like battle. What is it? The battle for Berlin, where you're fighting both fronts at once.
Hmm.
You have that where you don't know where the German reserve is, and it's much more detailed than Battle for Berlin, and so
Hmm.
surprises would be real. Um, and anyway, we've had night, and that somebody's still going to do that. That's going to be a great idea, a great game to have more detail than the Battle for Berlin, where you don't really know where the German surprise is going to be. And a good way of handling that too would be to make it so that the German doesn't know either
Hmm.
because they don't know the mind of the leader that's going to make that decision. So your idea about, oh, I think it would be good to try this, Operation Holland that
Hmm.
Ty has a game showing. Nice idea, and don't know if you're going to get that. But by not knowing, both sides don't know in some
Hmm.
way, and so the Germans really didn't know too. So there's all this stuff where there's need to know, and that depends on echelon.
Hmm.
So Randy Heller was asking me like, how could the 116th Panzer Division, uh, oh no, yeah, how could the the 58th Panzer Corps be meeting with the commander of this Jagdtiger unit on the 7th of December and then the 10th of December to discuss the need for heavy bridges to pass the Jagdtigers across? Uh, he said, how could that have happened since nobody knew about the offensive then? I said, well, in the echelon of uh, military affairs, you just do what's ordered.
Hmm.
If you're Major Grillenberger, you say, I'll be there.
Okay. There
I'll
we
be
go.
there. I
Yep.
don't know what we're doing. We're talking about bridges, and I need an 80-ton bridge.
Hmm.
I need an 80-ton bridge. Uh, no, no, don't ask questions.
I actually have seen a rule like that. Not that both players don't know where the German counterattack is going to come, but Beyond the Rhine actually has what is called the Wacht am Rhein rule, which is basically like a logistics and point stockpile that the German player can start building up. And he doesn't necessarily have to launch that counteroffensive in the Ardennes. The German
Yeah,
player can do it anywhere he wants.
yeah. So Andrew and I've had a lot of discussions. Another idea for you that you won't find anywhere else that you're going to find from Artie's show right now is all these variants. There's a very
Mm.
interesting one. It's called, I think, Variant 8. Let me get my handy dandy game booklet out, which will tell us about that.
I also feel like between the various scenarios and the variants and the optional rules that there is a ton of replay value in this box.
There's a lot of stuff, and before we leave the show, I've got to tell you about the humor angles too.
Okay.
We have to discuss that, but first I want to get into this variant that I want to tell your audience about that they should think about trying, which is um, Variant 9, the 7th Army Reinforced. So General Brandenburger, who was in charge of the German 7th Army, he had argued, and von Manteuffel, the 5th Panzer Army, had argued,
Hmm.
and von Rundstedt had all argued that the 7th Army down there weren't putting enough resources, and Hitler was determined to give more resources to the 6th Panzer Army for reasons that we know.
Hmm.
You know, the closer to the Meuse, the SS guys, we want to make sure that they get through fast. But you know, a lot of unfortunate ideas he had about that. But the 7th Army Reinforced um, brings two formations into the 7th Army that could have easily have been there.
Hmm.
One is the 257th Volksgrenadier Division. It was the 7th Army attack was supposed to have 5 infantry divisions. They only had 4. That would have given them the 5th Infantry Division, and you could say, well, infantry divisions weren't that easy to come by for the Germans. Well, that one's was very close by. It was training in Wittlich for weeks before the attack.
Hmm.
It was well trained. It had a veteran cadre. It had great NCOs and also a really experienced artillery officer. And then if you look at its final employment in Operation Nordwind, it did very well. Anyway, it could have easily have been in the 7th Army. And so we have it in there. The other thing is the German 21st Panzer Division, which was very weak, but it was of Africa Corps fame, right?
Hmm.
And it still had a lot of veterans from that unit, even though the unit was really weak.
Hmm.
It was really weak because it was being used as a fire brigade down south to deal with any time Patton was making too big of incursions. Call those guys up and say, please come down and get beat up again to stop these people.
Hmm.
And they did it. Um, but anyway, it's a high morale unit. And the Germans did a lot of emergency rebuilds on divisions at this point in the war.
Hmm.
They could have, in the scenario that you have there, or the variant, we don't assume that they had the emergency refit. So the 21st Panzer Division is available, and it was just south of the Ardennes. It could have driven up. It wouldn't need trains because a lot of things got blocked because the Americans blew up the train network.
Hmm.
But it didn't need trains. It could have driven up, and it could have been there for the 7th Army, and it could have done what all the German planners were arguing for, except for Hitler. And it would, between those two divisions, it would have made an enormous difference in what happened in the Ardennes.
Hmm.
Why? Any Bulge game worth its salt will show that the salient, the region that's south of Bastogne between Echternach and Bastogne is weak and
Hmm.
difficult to defend. And the Germans
Hmm.
would be advancing right in the area where the Americans would be weak. They would be protecting the flank of the Panzer Lair Division and the 2nd Panzer Division. I believe the Meuse bridgeheads would have been established with that, and probably that would have allowed Andrew's British to come on and absolutely destroy them. But anyway, that would be fun to find out. And the British in this game are rendered at a resolution and level never seen before in a Bulge
Hmm.
game. So you've got that. Okay, I said that we were going to talk about humor, and that's important. So uh, the air campaign, I've written this thing that you can find on Facebook about why the air campaign was really important, and most people don't really know what happened. I wrote a book about that in 1994. That's a better resource than it is a book, but it's called "To Win the Winter Sky," and we translated the results of that into the game, so you have actual air units that participated,
Hmm.
and they include jet units for the Germans, and they included a lot. The Germans actually had if you look at the fighter groups they had available, they actually had a lot. The problem was the pilots weren't well trained, and uh, everybody in the German army was complaining about what poor training meant in panzer divisions. You ain't seen nothing until you've seen a poorly trained pilot. They can hardly figure out how to get back home,
Hmm.
much less fly and try to shoot down the other guy. But anyway, So, but the jets did make up for that, and so you have that, and so there's this entire air battle in the game or air war in the game that's like another dimension that you've not experienced before, I think. And when you play the game, you will. Um, so, uh, but relative to the humor of that, Hitler decided that since they couldn't make up numbers relative to getting enough aircraft to really have air superiority, and there wasn't going to be an effort to do that in the game. You try and it doesn't work. But anyway, there was an effort to reestablish air superiority over the Ardennes. The Germans actually contested it on the 17th and 18th. The reason why you don't hear about the Americans wreaking havoc over the Ardennes is because the Germans actually committed a lot of planes to
Hmm.
try to stop Allied air power, and they succeeded in contesting it. They did not establish air superiority, but uh, Hitler had an idea, which was the V1 campaign that had been used against London and Antwerp, stop that and then use it to smack the Americans coming into the Ardennes. And especially, they had V-Leute, these secret agents that were all throughout Belgium reporting back, and they knew where the U.S. fuel reserves were, and they were massive. They were in this rail yard southeast of Liège called Quincampoix. It's on the map,
Hmm.
and uh, and also the fuel is on the map, and so they thought, well, we'll try to blow that up. That would be nice. Blow it up, and they actually on the 17th. Well, I'm getting ahead of myself. So the way to establish air superiority was turn the V1 campaign against the Americans,
Hmm.
blow their fuel up. We know where it is. The problem was this was not an accurate weapon,
Hmm. Right.
and so in the game it's reproduced, and so there was so many V1 strikes uh, that went on during the Ardennes, uh, and they weren't random, but they were hitting all over. And so on the 17th, they actually hit the rail yard in Quincampoix with one V1 that managed to blast 200,000 gallons of fuel.
Hmm.
But there were millions there. So, and there's a picture of that if you want to see how massive what those yards looked like. There's in the game booklet on let's find it for you on page 66. You can see the fuel yard.
Hmm.
So uh, you talk about jerry cans going in the trucks. There were a lot,
Hmm. That's a
and
lot of
so
jerry cans
there's a
right
lot of jerry
there.
cans. And so, but anyway, the V1 campaign is in the game. You're launching two V1s every turn for the Germans, day or night. And the problem is that Hitler expected that they would create a lot of terror in the American rear areas, and that they would be stuck not even being able to use Liège in this area around Huy, Huy, and they knew that there was an important bridge there. They would not even be able to use that to, but it didn't work. The Americans found them completely annoying, and in the game, they're kind of completely annoying, but they can be annoying for both players.
Hmm.
So, but they still happen, and so uh, you get you get to see how the V1 campaign played out, and there is a chance that you'll hit that dump in a big way, and things will be different.
Hmm.
But there's also a big chance that you won't. Uh, and then there are other humorous things. The commandos, a lot of people playing games have complained about commandos in Bulge games for a long
Hmm.
time. We have them, so they're not outrageous in terms of their abilities, and they're mostly incompetent in terms of doing what they're set out to do.
Hmm.
They're annoying because they're I think actually I really like them. They're an optional rule. I couldn't get the other two guys to agree to have them in the regular rules, but they're annoying, and I think that they really add something to the game. And they're the uncertain bridges in the game. They have a question mark on the bridge
Hmm. I
uh,
remember
hex,
this.
hex side, and the commandos are good to try to find out if that bridge is there or not. They're not good to know what the capacity of the bridge is,
Hmm.
and so there's some limitations that way. But the commandos are, and they can also try to screw up demolition of bridges, which they actually did.
Mm.
So those things add kind of a an element of annoyance to uh, for both players, and yet if you approach it right, I think it's funny. And so like I said, I think humor in these games is potentially important. We need a bit of comic relief.
Hmm. Hmm. Well, and that's going to come out at the table, right? I mean, everybody's got their favorite little anecdotes about popular wargaming topics, and we've all got them about the Bulge specifically. So that's going to come out organically, I think, as those things come up in play, right?
Yeah, yeah, I think so. And like for instance, Girolami is a huge fan of the Commandos. He said those things are great. I
Hmm.
really love them. He also is a big fan of the leader rule of the headquarters.
Hmm.
Excuse me, the headquarters rules, and that's a major innovation in the game because each army commander gets to designate a prime a prime spearhead, a prime effort, and
Hmm.
that's something that really happened, and uh, it matters in the game, and Rick really loves the way it translates in the play of the game, and didn't find it hard. It ended up an optional rule because it was another layer that we didn't want players to have to deal with, but
Hmm.
he thinks it really adds a lot to the feel of the game. So
Sure, sure. Without, like you mentioned, because we've seen Bulge games where the commandos are, let's say, a little more capable than they were historically.
yeah, yeah, and too capable. They're
Hmm.
misdirecting units all over the place, and
Hmm.
but anyway, in this game they're throttled, and they do some things, and but and there's something humorous about them for me, and they add another dimension to the game, which is there were these units that were behind the lines, and it's not important like the hugely important work that Rich Hoffman did on the battle group Piper rules in the
Hmm.
game. Um, so it appears that I'm working. One of the final books I'm doing on the war is a book about Piper, battle group Piper in the Ardennes, and it'll appear in November or December. Maybe I'll have it in time for Expo. But anyway, it appears like that man was pretty addicted, shall we say? No, addicted might not be the right word. Anyway, he abused Pervitin, and you can attack. And he loved fighting at night, and so the rules really emphasize the role of that unit attacking at night.
Hmm.
Um, but that didn't work so well over the long haul, where you eventually got so you needed sleep. So anyway, Rick has great rules. They're called friction of war for Piper, where it's possible Battle Group Piper may actually break out and get to the Muse River or environs. It's possible, and it can happen in the game. Uh, but it's also possible it won't. So anyway, that's really an interesting part of the game, and one I'm quite proud of. And I think Rich did a great job on that relative to the way it handles. And he play tested it a lot to try to make sure that this thing was working. So
Hmm.
because we know it's so important to have that right in the game, it's uh, so that's a serious element, I guess, not just comedy.
Hmm.
I guess maybe one could say, you know, the fact that he didn't attack on the night of the 17th from Stavilo probably is due to staying up for 48 hours running on, methamphetamine.
Hmm.
So you have to eventually sleep, folks. So anyway,
Won't get you that far. Danny, this looks absolutely phenomenal. I can't wait to get it to the table.
and you've been one of my biggest fans, and I really appreciate the enthusiasm you've had for this, and I really appreciate the enthusiasm that you have for all the stuff in the hobby. You really bring a lot to that, and your compliment means a lot, I guess, is what I would
Well,
like
I
to say.
appreciate that, and that means a lot coming from such an eminent individual as yourself.
And
So
there are other great people, you know. So we have great people in the hobby.
we do.
Butterfield, Herman,
Hmm.
Frank Davis. You know, Frank
Hmm.
is more like me. He just takes forever to do something. I said, Frank, don't die before Divine Wind gets done. So I think maybe he doesn't appreciate that kind of comment, but since I have health problems, I'm realistic about this. You got to finish things, folks. And if you have something really good to give to people, like this game is a gift. I'm giving this to the hobby, and it is a resource. I'm giving this to the hobby, so enjoy it. That's what it's for.
Hmm.
And we'll make the best of it. And I'm sure a bunch of us are going to be seeing what's happening come November, December, this coming fall.
Hmm. I will
Thanks,
expect.
Artie.
I'll expect to see this on a table at upcoming conventions, on many tables. Hopefully, I think there's a pretty good chance we could talk Rick into playing it at Winterfest. In fact, in February.
He may be the most enthusiastic person of all.
Oh yeah,
He loves this thing, and like I said, he plays them all. He plays Bitterwoods, Time for Trumpets, Battles for the Ardennes. He knows all these things. BCS, he knows. What is that? Last Blitzkrieg.
Yep,
So
Last Blitzkrieg, which I
and
enjoyed tremendously.
I
Let's not
think Last Blitzkrieg has a lot to say for it in terms
Mhm.
of the way things are being handled, and there are things that I think Carl won't like necessarily about what I've done here, but that's another conversation. Something I want to write for these little essays I'm preparing. One is like there's a lot of things that still aren't set in my mind. Like I have a lot of vehicle types, like the U.S. tank destroyer battalions. I have them individualized in the game, but Carl and I both know that, and Andrew was big on this. This is one of the places not agreeing. Those units never fought as a battalion. They were always parceled out to the individual infantry regiments, but the steps they have in the game reflect the fact that it gives the U.S. infantry divisions more staying power. Enough said. But anyway, back to the fundamental thing. Thanks, Artie. I really appreciate everything, and I appreciate you spending these hours with me. So.
Well, thank you. It's been a real pleasure and a privilege to have you on, and don't worry, I'm going to pester you to be back on at the earliest opportunity. In fact, getting you and Carl on the same show might be a good idea, and let you guys argue it out.
Yeah, well, that's the thing. Nobody has a monopoly on innovation. Knowledge is good to bring to the story, and Carl's big on that. I'm big on that, but there are other people big on that. John Devereaux is really big on that. So anyway, there's a lot of important players in this whole thing, but I feel fortunate to know Bruno this well, and Bruno's helped me out the years, and so it's we continue. It's good.
And I guess I should mention for anybody that doesn't know how enthusiastic Bruno is about this game as well. So
I haven't talked to Bruno about it much. So Bruno's not he's not doing a lot of social media things, so I don't really know. I don't know how Bruno feels. I'm just happy that when his health can be okay. When you're at this age, you're an old codger gamer, so to be able to improve games or help games or play games, you got to be alive, folks. So you got to figure out how to handle that part. But still drink the right things and eat the right things and enjoy the hell out of your life. That's Parker's take on it.
I agree with that philosophy. So once again, Danny, thanks so much.
Yeah, thank you. And we'll talk to you soon.
Massive thanks to the patrons of Ardwulf's Lair whose support and encouragement make what we do at Ardwulf's Lair possible. Thank you, patrons. Links to help support the channel are in the video description, so check out the Patreon, the Ko-Fi, and the merch store where you can get snazzy Ardwulf's Lair t-shirts, drinking vessels, and other cool swag. There is also an affiliate link for Noble Knight Games in the video description. If you buy stuff through that affiliate link, it helps to support the channel with Noble Knight store credit. Thank you, Noble Knight. Until next time, thanks for watching, and happy gaming.